This is the Black Thread, stories passed down in whispers, where memory lingers and nothing truly leaves. Tonight's story is called The Last Carol on Black Pine Street. Christmas always comes quieter on Black Pine Street. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, more like the kind that listens back. Even the decorations know it. Lights hang careful. Wreaths don't sway unless the wind means to move 'em. Sound doesn't travel far here. It settles. I hadn't been back in years. Told myself I was only visiting, just passing through. That's what everybody says before the street reminds 'em otherwise. Black Pine sits just far enough off the main road that you don't end up here by accident. You turn onto it because you remember something, or because you're running from it. The houses line up close, old wood and tired brick, porches sagging like they've carried too many conversations they weren't supposed to hear. Mine was still there. Same narrow driveway, same porch light that buzzed instead of shining clean. I stood in the yard longer than I meant to, keys cold in my palm, feeling like the house was deciding whether it recognized me. Across the street, Miss Lily Crow's curtain shifted. She didn't wave, didn't need to. On Black Pine Street, noticing is enough. Miss Lily had been here longer than the street sign, longer than most of the houses, truth be told. Folks said if you wanted to know what Black Pine was thinking, you watched which lights she left on at night. This Christmas, every one of 'em was lit. I dragged my suitcase up the steps, wood creaking under my weight like it wanted to complain but didn't have the energy. Inside, the house smelled like dust and pine cleaner, someone's idea of keeping memory polite. I set the tree up by the window, same spot it used to stand when we were kids. Didn't hang much on it, just lights, white ones. Anything more felt like asking for attention. Outside, the sky dimmed early, clouds pressing low like they'd been waiting all year for this night. That's when I heard it. Not singing, not yet. Footsteps, slow, measured, more than one set. I moved toward the window, heart tapping too steady for comfort. On Black Pine Street, you learn early that sound has a purpose. Nobody rushes, nobody wanders. A group was coming down the sidewalk, coats dark, faces hard to see, moving together like they'd practiced it. Carolers. I almost laughed, almost told myself I'd forgotten how normal things look when you're gone too long. Then they stopped. Not at my house, at the one 3 doors down. And when they opened their mouths to sing, I realized something was wrong. I knew the melody, I just didn't know how. The song moved through the street like breath and cold air. Not loud, not soft either, just present, like it had always been there and I was the one who'd forgotten how to hear it. I stood by the window, hand still on the curtain, afraid that if I moved too much I'd remind the street I was watching. The carolers didn't sway, didn't smile. They sang straight ahead, eyes fixed on the house in front of 'em like it was answering back in a language only they understood. 3 doors down, pale blue siding, Christmas lights still up from years ago, tangled and dead. I tried to place the tune in my head. Church, maybe. Something old, something my grandmother used to hum while she cooked. But every time I thought I had it, the melody slipped, rearranged itself, stayed just unfamiliar enough to make my chest tighten. That's when I noticed Miss Lily. She had stepped out onto her porch without me hearing the door, slippers on her feet, coat buttoned wrong, hands folded like she was waiting on a bus she already knew was late. She didn't look at the carolers. She looked at me. Even from across the street, I could tell she was deciding whether to say something. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she lifted one finger and pressed it gently to her lips. Don't. The song ended the way it started. No final note, no release, just silence dropping back into place like it belonged there. The carolers stood for a moment longer than necessary. Then they turned, all at once, and continued down the street, one house at a time. I stepped onto my porch before I could talk myself out of it. "Miss Lily," I called, keeping my voice low. "That happen every year?" She didn't answer right away. Watched the carolers until they disappeared around the bend where black pine meets the dark trees. "Used to," she said finally, "before folks started pretending not to hear." I crossed the street, boards creaking beneath my shoes. "What song was that?" Miss Lily shook her head slow. "Ain't a song you keep, baby." "What does that mean?" She looked at me then, really looked like she was lining my face up with a memory she didn't like how well it fit. "Means it don't belong to nobody who still got business pretending this street don't remember them." A chill slid down my back that had nothing to do with the air. "So why sing it?" I asked. Miss Lily's gaze drifted to the house they'd stopped at. "Because some doors don't open unless you remind them what they forgot." I followed her eyes. The house was dark now. Not just the porch light, all of it, like someone had reached in and turned the place off from the inside. "No," I said, "that was lit before." Miss Lily nodded once. "Power outage?" She gave me a look so tired it almost felt kind. Power ain't never been the problem on Black Pine. We stood there in the cold, listening to the quiet settle back into its places. Down the street, the song started again, one house closer to mine. Miss Lily didn't move when the singing started again, and neither did I. That felt like the first rule, though nobody had ever said it. Don't rush. Black Pine doesn't like urgency. It takes that as a challenge. The song floated closer, house by house, stopping just long enough to feel deliberate, like each place needed its own remembering. I noticed then that the carolers never looked up at windows, never checked doors. They sang to the houses themselves, like wood and brick could listen better than people ever did. "Why don't folks do anything?" I asked. Miss Lily adjusted her coat. "Because doing something suggests you think you're part of the decision." That didn't sit right in my chest. "You saying whoever they stop at, that's already decided?" She didn't answer, which felt like an answer. We watched as they reached the next house. Lights flickered once, just a blink, then went dark, clean, quiet, no pop, no spark. I swallowed. "People just leave?" "They don't leave," Miss Lily said. "Leaving means you pack." "What happens to them then?" Her lips pressed together. When she spoke, it was softer. "Street keeps what it's owed." That was the second rule, I realized. Black Pine doesn't take more than it thinks belongs to it. The song shifted as it moved closer. Same melody, but something in it bent, like it recognized me now. A note stretched longer than before. Another dipped low enough to vibrate under my ribs. I stepped back without meaning to. Miss Lily noticed. "You hear it clearer now." "Yeah, I don't like that." She gave a sad little hum. Nobody ever does when it starts saying their name without words. I laughed once, sharp and wrong. "You saying it knows me?" "I'm saying you grew up here," she replied. That counts as an introduction. The carolers reached the house across from mine, the old Harris place, empty since I was a teenager. Nobody had fixed it up, nobody had sold it. It just waited. They sang longer there than anywhere else. My palms went slick. Why that one? Miss Lily's eyes didn't leave the house. Sometimes the street practices. Practices for what? She turned to me then, voice low, for when it matters. The song ended. The Harris house went dark, and for the first time that night I understood the third rule. Black pine doesn't warn you, it reminds you. The carolers turned. This time they were headed toward my side of the street, toward my house.
I didn't go back inside. That felt important, like the street was watching to see whether I'd hide behind walls that already knew too much about me. The carolers crossed the road slow, shoes brushing pavement in the same rhythm. No rush, no hesitation. Up close, I could finally see their faces, and that somehow made it worse. They weren't wrong. They were familiar, like people you recognize from dreams but can't place in daylight. One of them looked like my high school math teacher. Another like a woman who used to sit 3 rows ahead of us in church. None of them looked surprised to see me. Miss Lily stayed on her porch. Didn't call out, didn't come closer. That was another rule I hadn't asked for. The song didn't start right away. They stood in front of my house in a half circle, breath fog in the air, heads slightly bowed. I noticed then that their coats weren't all winter coats. Some were too thin, some too old, like they'd been chosen from different years and never updated. When they sang, it was quieter than before. The melody curled inward on itself, softer, heavier. I felt it in my throat, like the urge to say something I'd swallowed years ago. That's when it happened. One voice, just one, slipped out of time. It lagged half a beat behind the others, rougher, lower. I knew that voice. Hadn't heard it out loud in years, but my body recognized it before my mind caught up. Malik. I stepped forward without thinking. "That's not funny," I said, words coming out too loud, too sharp. "You can stop that." The song didn't break. Miss Lily's porch light flickered once. My heart hammered. "Malik," I said again, quieter this time. "If that's you." The voice didn't answer. It never broke from the melody, but the rhythm shifted, like the song had leaned closer to listen. I remembered then things I hadn't let myself touch in a long time. Christmas nights with the 2 of us sitting on this same porch, splitting cheap cocoa, daring each other to whistle old hymns wrong just to make our mama fuss. Malik laughing too loud. Malik always staying when I left the room first. The song ended. Silence pressed in so hard my ears rang. The carolers stood there, waiting, not for the house, for me. I felt the pull then, not physical, emotional, like the street was asking a question it already knew the answer to. Do you belong here now? I looked at the house, at the porch light buzzing like it was tired of pretending to work, at the window where the tree lights glowed steady and white. Miss Lily finally spoke. Her voice carried across the street, calm but heavy. "Baby," she said, "some songs don't take you when you hear 'em." I swallowed. "What do they take?" She met my eyes. "What you been holding instead." The carolers turned away. They didn't sing again. They moved on to the next house, footsteps fading into the dark, leaving me standing in a quiet that felt unfinished. My lights stayed on. I didn't feel relieved. I felt chosen. The street didn't go back to normal. That was the lie I almost told myself. That once the carolers passed, Christmas would settle into something familiar. Lights blinking, TVs murmuring through walls, somebody laughing too loud down the block. None of that happened. Black Pine held its breath. Miss Lily stayed on her porch long after the footsteps faded. When I finally crossed the street, she didn't look surprised to see me. Just tired, like she'd been waiting on a clock only she could hear. "They didn't take it," I said. I wasn't sure what "it" meant. House, me, the night? "No," she agreed. "They didn't." "So why do I feel like something's missing?" She nodded, slow. "Because sometimes what stays costs more than what leaves." We stood there in the cold, both of us listening to the absence where the song had been. I realized then how loud it had been without ever raising its voice, how much space it took up just by existing. "Has anybody ever heard it and stayed?" I asked. Miss Lily thought about that, long enough that I wished I hadn't asked. "Stayed breathing," she said finally. "Yes. And the rest? They belong to the street now." I looked back at my house, porch lights still buzzing, tree lights steady, everything doing its best to look alive. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not take it when they had the chance?" Miss Lily's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You already gave Black Pine something once." My chest tightened. "Malik?" She didn't answer, didn't need to. I remembered leaving. Not the argument, that was easier to recall, but the silence after. The way I told myself I'd come back, the way years stacked up instead. "You think the street keeps track?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Ain't nothing else for it to do." We went inside our separate houses after that, doors closing soft, no good nights, no promises. I lay awake on the couch, lights on, listening to the house settle. Every creak felt like a sentence starting and stopping halfway through. Somewhere past midnight, I heard a sound and wasn't footsteps, and wasn't singing. Someone humming, low, familiar, wrong. It came from inside the walls. I didn't get up to investigate. That felt like another rule. Christmas morning came gray and quiet. No sirens, no police tape. Just one house down the block still dark. Snow gathered on the porch like it had nowhere else to go. People would say someone moved. That's what they always said. I made coffee, stood by the window, watched Black Pine Street pretend it didn't remember what it had almost done. And I understood then. The carol isn't a warning. It's a question. This year the street hadn't finished asking me yet. I packed my suitcase that afternoon. Folded clothes neat, lined shoes by the door. Did everything the way a person does when they wants to believe leaving is still an option. The house watched me the whole time. I could feel it in the quiet, like walls leaning in just enough to hear my thoughts. Outside, Black Pine Street moved slow. A few doors opened. People stepped on the porches, nodded at each other like this was any other Christmas. Like one house down the block hadn't gone dark in a way that didn't feel temporary. Miss Lily swept her porch. She didn't look up when I came outside, didn't ask where I was headed. That felt intentional. "You ever leave town on Christmas Day?" I asked. She paused her broom mid-stroke. "Once." "And?" "Street let me," she said. Didn't mean it forgot. I leaned against the railing. "What happens if I stay?" Miss Lily finally met my eyes. "Then you answer when it calls." I laughed under my breath. "You make it sound like a job." "It is," she said, "just ain't one you apply for." I carried my suitcase to the car and set it in the trunk.
didn't close it right away. The sky had that washed-out look it gets after snow, like the world had been wiped clean but not forgiven. That's when I heard it again, not singing, humming, the same low sound from the night before, drifting from nowhere and everywhere at once. I felt it in my chest before my ears caught up. The tune curved familiar, unfinished, like it was waiting on me to remember the rest. My name slid through the sound, not spoken, recognized. I closed the trunk. Miss Lily nodded once, like she'd felt the shift in the air. "That's how it starts," she said. "What starts?" "Staying." I didn't argue, didn't ask what staying would cost. Some questions feel rude when they already know the answer. That night, I left the porch light on, not because I was afraid, because it felt like an agreement, a small one, temporary. That's what I told myself. Across the street, Miss Lily's light stayed on too. No singing came, no footsteps, just the hum settling into the bones of the houses, like the street was satisfied for now. I don't know what happens to the houses that go dark. I don't know where the people go. I don't know why the song knew Malik's voice so well. What I know is this: Black Pine Street remembers who belongs to it, and some Christmases it asks you to prove whether you remember too. I stayed.
Not every story wants an ending. Some just want to be remembered. You've been listening to The Black Thread.